Hi, everybody. My name is Phyllis Y. Whitley. And today on Whisper Unplugged, I am joined by James Robbins. He's the author of 9 Minutes on Monday and The Call to Climb. Now, James, before we jump into the climb, can you please briefly introduce yourself and tell the listeners who you are, what you do, and what's going on?
Phyllis, thanks for having me on the show. Great
Thank you.
to be here with you. So,
Yes.
yeah, my name is James. I grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rockies, shy, introverted, redheaded kid who couldn't get a
Wow.
girlfriend. And that was the beginning of my life. But, anyways, I now run a company where we go and we help people have better bosses by going in and doing a lot of leadership development and just helping companies be a greater place to work. But as you mentioned, I have a new book coming out that's titled The Call to Climb. I'm so excited about it. It's like nothing I've ever done before. And yeah, can't wait.
That's excellent. I looked a little dabbled in there and I'm going to order it because normally I do Audible
Okay.
and I noticed it didn't come out yet. But I was intrigued about it because it seems to be like a book that is inspiring people to face their fear, at the same time pursue their God-given purpose with courage and faith. And I do like that. I said it did something in my spirit to hear that. So as we go on, what I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions that I know that the listeners want to know. First of all, I would like to know what sparked the call to climb.
That was actually a literal climb of a mountain. I was living in Canada at the time and I was at a place with my job that I wasn't happy. And I met this guy who was a mountain climber and he ran a company that would take people up mountains. And he would say, "Hey, why don't you come with us? We're going to climb Mount Elbrus in Russia and one of the seven summits." And I would say, "Oh, I'd love to, but I can't. And it's a lot of time and I don't have money." And so, anyways, 6 months later, I'd be at his house again, and he would tell me the stories. And then he'd say, "Hey, we're going to go to Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Why don't you come?" And I'd love to, but I can't. And this just repeated a few times till I realized, I'm never going to go. Like I'm never going to go. And at the same time, I was craving like to do something because part of me felt like I was dying inside just in the daily routine of life. So I did. I just called him up one day. I said, "Okay, when's the next trip?" And he said, "To Bolivia." And I said, "Okay, how much do I need to pay you now?" And gave him my credit card and I signed up. And so that sparked a physical adventure, but it was during that time in my life where again I was working in a job and I was really struggling with, is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? And I wasn't happy. And it was during that time I read a book by a Jungian psychoanalyst named James Hollis, and it's called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. And he talked about when we have those moments, Phyllis, where we feel like we're not in alignment with something deeper inside of us. And he calls it the collision of selves, where we've got the self that has been built up by our parents and society, and this is how you should live your life. But then we have this other self that begins to emerge that's like, wait a minute, but this isn't me. But I'm actually not happy here. And isn't there something else for me to do? And those two selves collide. And that's what they did for me. And when that happens, usually you have a moment to, am I going to listen to this voice inside or will I just ignore it? And I just ignored it. And I just kept going because to make a change is scary.
Yes, that is so true. And I like that because it kind of is similar to mine's, but I go into the seeds that the parents put in you as you grow up and shape yourself. And that seed carries whispers. That's why most of my stuff is, you always hear the word whispers. So I really relate to that. Also, speaking about what happened to you, can you tell me how the pain shaped your purpose?
The pain shaped my purpose in that I got to a point where I thought I literally can't keep doing this job. And it began to impact even my health. And when I decided to make a change from all that, and it wasn't instant, I'd love to tell you that it was, oh, the next week I decided this. No, it was still a period of years of really struggling, feeling lost. But once I began to take that leap to say, well, no, let me pursue this. then it opens up another world where all of a sudden you see all these people that you can help that you didn't see before. People who have been through the same thing or they're going through the same thing, or maybe you're listening to this right now and you hate your job. I mean, you try not to say you hate your job, but in those quiet moments, you just think, I just hate my job, but you feel so stuck. And it's in those moments that you have to remember you're not stuck. It feels like you are. It really feels like you are, but you're not because there's so much within you. There's so much strength, so much power. There's so much within you. And sometimes you just have to learn to begin to trust it.
Yes, I definitely agree with that because I always hear that whisper throughout the day. And that's really deep because, like your services to others, to help others, plays a major key in your life.
Yes.
Could you give us a little bit of highlight on that?
Well, my first career was actually in Christian ministry, which I didn't
Mm,
expect. I That was not on my list of things to do when I was in high school. But, life is funny. And when I first went into ministry, the reason I went in there was because I enjoyed helping people. And there was a lot of freedom to it as well. But I enjoyed helping people, and that was amazing. But throughout the years in church, as you sort of rise up the ranks, then you get privy to, how things are done and some of the politics and some of the ways. And pretty soon, the purity of why I went into it began to be replaced by, just a lot of rules and even things I felt uncomfortable with. And it was during those moments that I thought, well, this isn't fun anymore. Like I have lost my desire to work in this setting.
that is really, really deep. And I'm so glad you talked about being in ministry. Let the listeners know what belief that you have to leave behind because sometimes it's a conflict when you are especially dealing with people outside the church and helping people outside the church. What belief do you feel that you had to leave behind in order to grow, James?
There were so many, but they weren't once you examine them, they weren't like beliefs from the Bible. They were just beliefs that honestly from the Christian community. And some of them were from the sort of my peers in ministry. Like I remember one time thinking, I don't know if I want to do ministry anymore. And my boss at the time said, well, you can't quit. Like you can't quit the ministry. God put you in the ministry, didn't he? Ministry is so built on this idea of a calling. I get called into the ministry, so you can't quit. And just told me that. And I was young at the time, so I didn't have the strength and conviction to kind of push back on that. So that made me feel even more stuck. The other belief was that, when you are in ministry, a lot of people will come to you and say, you must have like the best job in the world. Like it must be amazing just to be able to serve God all day. Well, if you're not feeling happy doing that and then people say that, like you just feel worse and you feel I did anyways. I felt really guilty. Like, what's my problem? What's wrong with me? And to leave ministry was to like,
Wow.
yeah, I was like quitting on God. And that's heavy. That's really, what did you do today? Well, I quit on God and like that's a really heavy thing. But it was,
Yes, it
it
is.
was those beliefs that kept me in a sense doing that longer than I should have. And
Mm,
in fact, I had a chance to sit down with John Maxwell over lunch, and I was still in
yeah.
ministry, but I was now teaching leadership in the corporate world and sort of followed in his footsteps in how he transitioned out of ministry. But I asked him, I said, "How did you know that it was time to, leave full-time ministry and start your business or run it?" And he told me a story about flying. He was in a plane and he was flying back to his city where his church was. And he just had this sinking feeling of like, ah, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when, for him, he was like, this is no longer a calling. It's now like a job. And so it's time for me to leave. And I was like, oh, I had that like 1,000 times, over the last few years, but I just didn't do anything. So it's coming to those moments where, Phyllis, I think everyone is seeking permission to live their life. But here's one thing I learned permission isn't granted, it has to be taken. You have
Mm,
to take permission back from whoever you've given it to, even if you gave it a long time ago and not realizing it. And you have to take permission back and just go, look, This is going to be my life. It's sort of like I wrote this in the book. When you're born, you start with these blank pages, but you're too young to write. And so your parents and your caregivers, they write in these pages of the book, which is like, this is you, Phyllis. Like, this is you. And
Mhm.
then at some
I
point,
agree.
as you get older, people hand you back the book and say, this is you. And then you start to read it and you're like, this is mostly me. But as you get older, you're like, wait a minute, actually, this is not me. And at that point, you have a decision to make, like take the pens back from everyone and start to write your own story. Because
Mm.
by the time we get to the end of our lives, we're going to reflect back on this book and who will have written your story?
I definitely agree with that. For everybody out there that knows me, I believe in rewrite your own story or revise your whispers. So I that just did so much for me, and definitely, I mean Maxwell, he's brilliant. I don't even know what to say about him. James, you was talking about being stuck. What do you say to a listener out there, listeners that is stuck at the bottom?
Being stuck at the bottom is no fun and it's not a great place to be. I would say this though, the moment you realize that you are stuck at and you're at the bottom, you're actually not anymore because you have created this awareness of where you are. And now all you have to ask yourself is, well, what do I want? And this goes back to the permission thing. A lot of times we think, well, what am I allowed to have? We want to answer that question, what do I want, with, well, what am I allowed to have? Well, no, but just what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? And I'm not talking about, oh, I want to win the lotto and so I can travel around to Italy and Greece. And no, we're not talking about that. You're created for so much more than traveling, though I love traveling. What do you want to do? And life leaves clues. And I think when we feel stuck at the bottom, we also have to take a look at, well, why do I feel like I'm stuck here? Is it because I have failed and failed and failed? I've tried businesses and they didn't work out. I mean, that's so much my story. If I told you the amount of different things we've tried, businesses I've tried, stuff I've launched, and how much of it has just ended in failure, it's so discouraging. Right. And so when we think about, well, what do I want? Look, life leaves a trail of breadcrumbs. And
I like that.
sometimes it's even Phil is just looking back
Yes.
into your early life and imagine for a moment if you could think of what was one of the best days of your life as a kid. What was one of the best days? Not generally like, oh, hanging out with my friends, but no, a specific day. Like what was a specific day that you still remember now? And then run yourself through that day. What was going on? What happened? And why was that such an amazing day? And there are often, not always, but often there are crumbs in there that speak to what brings your soul alive.
Hmm.
And,
Wow.
there's other things that are breadcrumbs in our lives, things that make you happy, things that are effortless for you, even things that make you angry, right? Because what makes one person angry doesn't make another person angry. What breaks your heart? Well, why does that break your heart? When you start tuning in, there begins to form like a shape you start to see. And here's one of the challenges I think, Phyllis, is that, everyone's
Mhm.
trying to find their purpose in life. And I write
Yes.
about this in the book because I have a bit different take on it. I don't think your purpose in life is, found in some developing country, building a school, though those might be great things. I think your ultimate purpose in life is to bring the most authentic and honest version of you to this world. And that's your gift to the world. That's our purpose. Now, what do we do with that most authentic version of ourselves? Okay, well, that's where we do what's called our worthy pursuits. And there could be 1,000 different things you could do. Yeah, you could go build schools. Yeah, you could become a teacher. You could work in engineering. Like your job is never your purpose. Your purpose is just to bring you to this world. Now, in terms of what to do, okay, great. Let's look at those breadcrumbs that we see in our past, in our present, and let's begin to experiment. Let's just try different things. And you're never too old to do something new.
I like that. You remember he said, "You're never too old." The breadcrumbs, I like that too because that's similar to my whispers. So when you said look at something that made you happy, but don't do the friendship thing, first thing my mind went to is being around certain friends and playing outside. So that was really, really deep. That's something that I definitely need to look into. I'm gonna have to really get into your book for that because I never had it. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this at you, James. When I was by myself, I used to go to the movies around the corner because I'm from New York, and I would just walk over there and sit there because at that time the movies was back to back to back. And I would just sit in the chair, got my popcorn, and they let you in. It wasn't no age restriction. I was so happy just watching these movies. Would that be a breadcrumb?
For sure, because look at it this way. Sometimes we like being alone, but for you, it was alone when you immersed yourself in stories. And isn't
Mm.
it interesting that here you are, years later, interviewing people so they can share their stories? Not quite in a movie theater, but there's a there's a connection.
Wow. Who would have thought? And also because I have several books out there.
And there you
So
go.
I can see the connection, the breadcrumb. Because I was getting ready to say, now I don't know how he can say something like this for me being in the movie theater. Because I was alone, but yet I was surrounded by so many people. But yet I was in my little space. So that's a breadcrumb. Everyone, listen, we got more questions for him, and we are so glad that James decided to come into my space and make my space and bless my space. So, what I want you to do is, I want you to subscribe, and I want you to go ahead and tell your friends to subscribe because I don't know who you know. So, we're going to go ahead and move forward. Now, I'm going to ask this, and I want you to be honest.
Okay.
And I know you're gonna be honest anyway, but when you coming from ministry, I can hear the whispers and what people say, and because I consider myself, I have a very close relationship with God, personal relationship with God, and I heard it all. Family closed the door on me, and I seen it all. What do your mountain looks like now? This is a two-part question. I want to know what your mountain look like now. Do you still consider yourself in a relationship, or how would you would say it, serving God?
So, my mountain now, I think I'm climbing several of them. One is parenting adult children and that whole journey, because that's going to be one of the mountains I continue to climb all my life. On a closer to every day is the practical mountain of my business, launching this book. That's a mountain to climb and all of that. To your second question about relationship with God, the great thing for me is what I've had to learn. So much in ministry you can get caught up in, and I certainly did, a formulaic idea of a relationship with God. And it involves, hey, get up, have your morning devotional, read your Bible, say some prayers, make sure you're at church, be with people, give money, right? So there's these boxes that you check, and if you keep checking the boxes, you're doing well. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong to obviously do those. Those are great spiritual disciplines, and it's why we call them that. The problem can be when people veer away from spiritual disciplines and then they start to think, oh, I have veered away from God. And I think like nothing could be further from the truth. It's just this is what I think. I think whether you are praying or not, God has not moved an inch away from you. And he's patient and kind and loving and loves us more than even we understand. So I think for me, my relationship with God has matured. Although if I was to go back in time and grab 10 years ago me and brought him here, I think he might judge me for what my relationship with God looks like now versus what it looked like then.
I thank you for sharing. On another note, I want to know something about your family. How did they influence your journal? Your journey?
I grew up, like I said, on a cattle ranch, and my wonderful parents, my mother was the spiritual one and still is. My father was the pragmatic, more science based one. And I'm a product of both of them. Both of them live within me equally, and I can be both those sides. So, of course, when I began my spiritual journey, I remember I started attending church in college, got baptized. I didn't tell my father, I told my mother because, I knew she would value that. and I was afraid to tell my father. So that just kind of tells you a bit about that relationship. But it was years later. In fact, the first time I thought about quitting ministry, I told my parents, and my dad was like, "Sure, I will help you if you want to go to law school or something. Like, what help do you need?" And my mother wrote me a letter saying, "How dare you? How dare you think about quitting? You do a good job in ministry." It wasn't until years later, you get to the point where you have to ask yourself, am I going to care what my parents think of my road? And I think as my dad would come out and see me speak on Sunday, and I really focused on trying to be a good preacher. And, I became good at being on stage. And as my father saw that, I know he was proud of that. He was proud of that to see me. So there's a lesson in that, Phyllis. And that's that
Hmm.
what people think at the start of your journey is not what they're going to think 10 years in. And I
Okay.
remember my
Okay.
brother decided to join the Navy when he got out of college, or no, when he got out of high school. My father was so angry at him. But then 5 years later, we're on a wharf as the whole fleet was coming home from being overseas, and there's all these flags and music. And my father, for the first time, said he felt proud that what the choice his son had made. And so it was my father's to change, not my brother's. And that's
Hmm.
really the thing for all of us is that that's why you have to chart your own path. Doesn't mean that it's not influenced by others. Doesn't mean that it's not that you don't seek input. Many advisors, right, bring success. But at the end of the day, it's your life. And how people feel about your life now is they will probably feel differently 5 years from now. So underneath it all though, I've had a great supportive family, and then of course, my kids,
That's
I
good.
drug them all over the place and they're still close to me, so that's good.
That is excellent. I look at people who actually was in ministry, and I always feel when they come over and cross over and start helping people like you are doing with your services, I feel like they didn't leave God. They went into the marketplace, which to me, Jesus spent most of his time in the marketplace because it's people out there that you need to reach that will never step foot in a church or been church hurt. So I feel that when you bring your stuff, your ministry to the marketplace, of course, like you say, God is right there. So I commend you for what all have you are doing and about to do. I have a couple more questions. Is that all right with you? Just a few more. Okay. If I'm tired and I come to you and say, I'm at this point right here and near the top of the mountain, what do you say to people like that?
Well, first, Phyllis, I want to know, why are you tired? Because the reason you're tired is going to change my answer. It's a little bit like,
Oh, boy.
why are you sick? Well, I need to know why. That's going to change what medicine we prescribe. Sometimes we're tired because we're just physically not getting much sleep, and then that messes with our emotions and all that kind of stuff. And, that can, physical fatigue can also be fixed with mostly physical recovery. But there's a deeper tired, right? And that's when we're tired of spirit, we're tired of soul. Our soul is tired. And our
Mm,
soul is tired because
good.
we're dragging it down some road that it knows this is not what we were created for. We were made for more. And the soul
I like that.
whispers to us, nudges to us, can even create a crisis in your life if you don't listen to it. The soul, I believe, can even bring moments of depression, anxiety. It's just
Mhm.
trying to get your attention. And that's really the premise of the book, The Call to Climb. It's a fable written about a character who is ignoring the whispers. And so what
Mm,
happens in the book is there's this sort of mythical mountain in the middle of the Andes, and it calls people to climb when they're out of sync with their soul so that they might get away from the distractions of the world and sit down and have a conversation with their soul. And maybe for the first time in years, listen, right, to that inner voice. So that's what the book's about. And the book really did come out of my own journey. So, as you read that, just understand so much of the main character story is my story.
that was good. I'm gonna say this though, when you say what's the purpose? the reason why I'm tired. When it seems like you climbing and some people leave. It's a season for people to leave and people to come in, and you feel like you alone climbing a mountain. What is your advice on that?
Well, it's no good climbing alone for too long, and we're all
Mm,
built for relationships. And even if you're an introvert, you need that, what I call your rope team, right? You need that, who's that core that's on your rope team? And often it's not family members. It's those people that you've connected with during your life. Like if I think about who my rope team is, most of them are, they don't even live in my city. They're hours away on a plane, but we have stayed connected. We help each other, we prop each other up. Sometimes I'm tired because maybe I've had setback after setback where it's not a
yes,
soul thing and it's not even a physical thing, just tired of failing, right? I'm tired of falling short. I'm tired of something not working. And then
yes, yes,
when we get that kind of a tired, what's happening is we begin to lose faith in us, right? We lose faith in ourselves. So what happens when we're losing faith? Well, sometimes faith needs to be strengthened outside of us, and that's where those friends come in. Even if they're not
mm,
encouraging you, just to talk with them. And I had a one of my rope team, one of my close friends just texted me today. He was like, "Hey," and he knows that we're pushing hard with this book climb and or with this book launch, and he just sent me an inspiring story about a guy who had come up to so many obstacles again and again, but then finally he launched something that was really amazing. And he sent that to me to strengthen me, right? And so that's what we need in our lives, and we need to be that to other people, right? We need to be thinking, who
yes,
can I strengthen today? So if you're listening to this, I mean, think about the people close to you. Think about the people who are climbing their own battles that maybe we don't think about, but they are. What can you do
yes.
to send them a text, send them an email, give them a call, send them something inspirational? Just, hey, just thinking about you. Man, keep going.
I love it. And you said road team. What is that? ROW? How do you spell that? Is that road
No,
team? What
sorry,
do
I
you
should have spoken more clearly. So when you're on the mountains, you
Uh-huh.
attached to a rope because you
Oh,
do that for safety. Because if one person falls
yeah.
into a hidden crevasse, they're not going to fall to their death. The rest of the team is there to strengthen them. But when you clip onto a rope with other people, a rope team on the mountains, the first time I did, it really has an impact. At least it did on me because you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, my life is not my own now in this moment. Everything I do impacts the people behind me and the people in
Mm,
front of me. And
love it.
if I go too slow, it's going to hold someone back. If I go too fast, it creates too much slack in the line and that catches in the ice. I got to watch my pace. If I have bad energy and bad attitude, it just reverberates through the group. And if I do something stupid because I'm not paying attention and I risk my life, I actually risk their lives. So when you think of rope team, it's just who's that group
Okay,
that you
rope.
count on, right?
I love it. I love it. But I'm gonna ask you a serious question. What happens when that person keeps slowing the team down? Is it time for them to go? Because I feel that everybody can't go with you to the top. Some people are there maybe for the foundation to motivate you. I think at certain levels. I don't know, how do you see that? If somebody's just slowing you down or they don't want to go because, they don't want to move forward. If they slowing you down, everybody's going to be slowed down. What do you do in a predicament like that?
Yeah, those are never easy situations. But at the end of the day, most rope teams are not going to be the same team for every aspect of your life, right? And also to
Okay,
think
I
about
like that.
this. I mean, I've heard it said before, like, oh, if somebody's not adding to your life, cut them out of your life. And that sounds really nice to sanitize your life of anybody who causes friction. But
Mhm.
what about you? Are you like the perfect person on everyone else's rope team? Like, or do you cause someone's friction and they should cut you out as well? So there's a difference between when
That
someone's
kinda hurt.
not easy, right? And then when someone's actually hurting you. And of course, when people are crossing those lines, crossing those boundaries, hurting you, yeah, that cut the rope, right? Cut the rope. But
I love it. Cut the rope. Now I can see everything coming together, why the mountain, and that's true. Everybody, is holding on to the mountain. I can see the group. I can see everything that you're saying now. You shouldn't be alone, and it should be people there on the rope team. Speaking of team, I'm going to end it with the book that is getting ready to come out. But I have to go into what caught my eye is 9 minutes on Monday. The way you're talking about a team, I'm assuming that everything is this particular book is a good book for a entrepreneur, a leader, and how to deal with or boost their team performance every day or every week. Can you give us a little bit about that?
For sure. 9 Minutes on Monday is a leadership framework. And basically, it's around the premise that great leadership is actually the simple things done consistently. Care about your staff, help them grow, make sure you recognize great work, help them make progress, help them feel a sense of purpose at work, don't micromanage them, and be a good example, right? It comes back down to that. Now, everyone knows those things, but the problem, Phil, is everyone's so busy that we get away from those things. It's a little bit like six pack abs. We know what it takes to get six pack abs, but I don't have them. It's not a knowledge problem. It's just that I don't do the things needed to get me that. It's the same with leadership. And so 9 Minutes on Monday, it's built around these nine engagement drivers. And where the
Yes.
9 Minutes on Monday comes in is that once you learn these drivers, then you come to work every Monday. And before you get into your to do list and your email, you sit down and you ask yourself nine simple questions. And each question creates a micro goal. Who am I going to show genuine interest in this week? Who am I going to help grow? Who am I going to, recognize for something that they did that was great? And you just create these small micro goals and you execute them through the week. And it's not the one week that turns it around, but it's the week after week after week of showing up as that kind of a leader. Then what happens is your people begin to give more of themselves. And now you start to see greater productivity, greater happiness, more morale increases. So that's the premise of 9 Minutes on Monday.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that. Could you share one Monday habit?
Yes, the first one actually, which is it's all based around the need. People have a need to be more than a number, right? And so the first question to ask yourself is, with whom will I show genuine interest or concern this week? And it's a simple question of, for me to think about my staff and think, okay, how's Shelly doing? She had to go to her mom is sick, and let me go and ask how her mom's doing. It's a moment for me to remember that, and then ask her. It's the little things that, honestly, it's the things your grandmother told you to do. But when you get too busy, you show up on Monday morning and the first thing you're like, hey, where's this email? How come I don't have? And we go into the all the things I need. But that's a moment
Mm,
of,
I see.
let me hey, let me ask Mary how her son Joey's soccer tournament was on the weekend. Right? I'll swing by the office. Hey, how was Joey's soccer tournament? And in that moment, you communicate, hey, you're important because time is valuable. And I'm using some of my time because I'm genuinely interested in you and your family. That's what creates the kind of workplace that people don't want to leave.
Excellent. We're gonna look out for that book. Meanwhile, if it's all right with James, I'm gonna have the book linked. The one for the book, not the one for climate, because that's not gonna come out until when?
That comes out
Could
in
you give us a
August. So we're coming up.
Okay, 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 that's gonna come out in August. Okay, yes, but the 9 minutes on Monday, I gotta put it in
For sure.
my
Thank
link
you. Yeah.
because
I'll
yes.
send you the links.
Boy, yes, I do appreciate you with that. Now, also, before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you again for sharing and showing me something. You really have showed me a lot. I do have another question for the people out there, the listeners out there. Could you please let them know what service and support do you currently offer people to help them climb?
Well, if you're a business owner, then of course we have lots of coaching programs and online courses, and you can
Oh,
find
good.
those on our website. But with the book coming out in 6 weeks, there's also going to be a program that goes with it where you can basically do a climb with a bunch of people and be coached through the principles in the book. Is going to help you get more in touch with how, what your soul really wants you to do with your life. and how to break free from all those fears that are holding you back from showing up as the authentic version of you. So that's not ready yet. That'll come out when the book comes out, and you'll find all that at the website I Will Climb.
Thank you. Is there any other social media you would like to share?
I can send you some for the show notes, all of our LinkedIn or Facebook. You can find us on all there. If you're more on the business end, you find me on LinkedIn, come say hi and be happy to connect.
Excellent. We getting ready to wrap up, but y'all gotta forgive me because he's so interesting with his philosophy in the book. I can't wait to August actually come. I'm really very curious of what uh I'm gonna go ahead and get this other book out the way because I need help as an entrepreneur. But we are going to be looking forward to that in August. And my last question for you today is what new direction is God calling you toward now?
I feel like God is calling me to take this work that we're starting with the climb and really push that message out there that you were made with a divine signature, and there's reasons why you're here. And you don't have to wrestle with self-worth because that's already been determined a long time ago. You just need to trust that. And as you do, and life begins to open up. So I think for me, that's where I feel like I'm being called to really push into this message without, neglecting my leadership work that I do in the corporate world. But this is really the stuff that speaks to my soul.
Yes. Well, we thank you for speaking to our souls and continue the good work and for stopping in my space and making a big difference. James, thank you again. We are out.